Welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast with Scott McKenzie. Scott is a passionate industry professional dedicated to transferring cutting-edge, industry-focused innovations and trends while highlighting the men and women who keep the world moving. So put on your hard hat, grab your work boots, and let's go.
All right, welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast. Absolute honor that you have joined us. This platform, as you know, it is dedicated to the women, men of manufacturing and industry. You are our heroes. We love you. Each and every day on this particular platform, you are bold, you are brave, you dare greatly. Thank you. Thank you for what you're doing. Thank you for your innovation. Thank you for just your passion on making our lives better. That's why we celebrate you on this particular podcast. All right. This is an Infor interview. We have Rene Nazario, that's N-A-Z-A-R-I-O, CEO of a company called VisualK. And we're talking about micro verticals in power gen. How about that? That's a mouthful. He's going to explain it. That's what we're all about. Let's get going. Micro verticals. It's a pretty cool name. Cool. And we're talking about EAM. We're talking about Infor EAM. We're talking about that particular platform. And I just want to let you know right now, we start talking about Industry 4.0. We start talking about IoT, IIoT, with AI, edge, cloud, everything that you can possibly imagine with Industry 4.0. You need a robust system like the EAM product that Infor puts out. And this is a particular, this is a partner. VisualK is a partner, and they deploy it within the utility generation space. And I mean, they're achieving some great success, and they're really moving that ball forward and helping these companies truly succeed. It's a fascinating and fantastic conversation. I love their passion, love their focus, love what they're doing with the Infor EAM product. Before we get going, however, let's talk a little bit about this, and I'm going to continue. We keep on bringing great interviews on this particular podcast. We keep on highlighting great companies. We keep on highlighting individuals that are passionate about your success, and I'm here to tell you that you just have got to reach out to them. They have a big heart to collaborate, big heart to innovate, big heart to help educate as any way possible. Especially, they've got tremendous tenacity, especially now when we are talking about this, whatever, next normal, new normal. I don't know what you want to call it, but it is different, because if you think you're going to do business as usual, like in the pre-virus world, think differently, baby. You need to be innovative. You need to collaborate. You need to definitely educate. You need to do it with a sense of speed and purpose. And you've got to, boy, do you have to be tenacious. So those are my things. So I want you, and I challenge you, that you're going to hang out with people. You're going to reach out to Rene and the team at VisualK, right? And you're going to collaborate with them, because they're bold, they're brave, they dare greatly, they innovate, and they're there to help you each and every day. That's what they're about. All right, we're going to get on with the interview. Rene, that's R-E-N-E, Nazario, N-A-Z-A-R-I-O, CEO of a company called VisualK, and it is exactly what it's VisualK. It's pretty cool. And they focus in on generation assets within the United States and Latin America, South America, Caribbean, all around there. And they deploy, definitely put out a product, a service, a solution that is helping these assets generate and become more reliable, insights, and they're delivering the service with a tremendous amount of success. We're also going to be talking a little bit about, you got to listen up for this one in the interview, the Maintenance Asset Health Index, which is very cool when you think about that. They're able to determine, based off of data, where that particular asset sits within that health, right? Meaning, it's okay? Is it trending in a bad direction? But anyway, they're doctors, man. That's what they are. They're doctors in asset management. That's what they do. All right, enjoy this particular interview, because does he bring the fire. He's passionate. His name is Rene Nazario, CEO, VisualK company. Enjoy. Rene, welcome to the Industrial Talk Podcast. Absolute honor that you have joined the #1 industrial-related and manufacturing-related podcast in the universe. Yes, I did say that. Yes, I did catch you off guard. How are you doing?
Scott, thanks for having us. It's a pleasure being here with you. We're very excited to share this moment.
Big time. And you know, my street cred is all around utilities, generation, transmission. So I'm looking big time forward to this particular conversation. Before we get into that, however, let's give us a little 411, a little background on who Rene is.
Well, thanks. So a little bit of who we are. I am the CEO of VisualK. I was born and raised in Puerto Rico. I have a mechanical engineering background. I did some work with microelectronics manufacturing, have a master's from Rensselaer Polytechnic in New York. And then I went wandering in the world of being an entrepreneur, right? And being out there, we created VisualK just about 20 years ago. And we started in LATAM, doing some work with ERP. Then we migrated doing some work in software side with enterprise asset management, EAM with Infor. And it's been a great journey. Right now, I live in Georgia, Alpharetta, close to Atlanta, and been having a lot of fun.
Now, that's interesting because 20 years is a long haul for a business, definitely. I just got to ask the question, what made you, from an entrepreneurial perspective, what made you decide that you wanted to start your own company, and what niche were you filling at that particular time?
I was in a transition at that point in time in my life. So I was, weighing my options, and I decided, why not give it a try? There was not much risk in my life. So I wanted to make it more interesting and go out for the adventure. Obviously, my wife supported me. So she said, go ahead, give it a try, see if it works. And we're still trying it 20 years after. So I guess it worked out.
Clearly, it's working. Most definitely. And I do, like I said, listeners out there, I like the niche that they've carved out in their business model, and that is really focusing in on the generation side of business and definitely leveraging the Infor EAM product to be able to provide those services to that particular market. Can you give us a little sort of an overview of what you focus in on specifically from a generation perspective? Sure.
So just to give you a little bit of history, right? When we started working with EAM around 2007, we started seeing all these plants that had a previous version, those software that came in a box, right? If you remember that, you used to buy.
I installed one. I had. Yeah. And it didn't go well.
Yeah. So, and it was pretty successful. It was called MP2, right? So it was Yeah. So it was a very well-known software.
Yeah.
And we started reaching out to those companies and to migrate, right? You want to go to the latest and greatest version, which is EAM. And obviously it's mission critical. If you're talking about electrical power generation, right? If something goes wrong, that really can bring down one of the turbines, and then that really could bring down the whole power generation, and you get in a lot of mess, right?
Very little flexibility in that. Yeah, you don't want that.
Right. So based on that, we started gaining some momentum in that area, right? And just converting some of the MP2 customers and then selling them. Obviously, it helped out that we had really good customers and really good references. And then we started gaining momentum with that, right? And to this point right now, we have over 80 power generation plants that work with that we serve and we tend to with Infor EAM in our services. And it's been a learning process, it's changing very, very fast and moving forward, right?
And that's interesting because from a power gen, from my background, one of the things that never really changed fast was power gen, because those assets had a life. If you have a transformer and that transformer's out in a substation and that transformer just sits there, you don't see a lot of wheels turning with that thing, and so there's a long life expectancy with pretty much utility assets. And so when we start talking about asset management within the utility space, it's not like a manufacturing line where things are twirling and spinning and moving and grinding out. It's hard to see that dynamic within the generator, outside of the turbine, outside of the generator, and all of those stuff. So. Let's talk a little bit about that, listeners. EAM stands for Enterprise Asset Management. So it's a system. Primarily, it could be on-prem, it could be in the cloud, but it really is a and I'm going to simplify it and jump in, Rene, it's a place where you can put all your assets and get a good picture and details associated with those assets of that particular business. It's right there. There's a lot of work that goes on to that. So prior to this particular conversation, we talked a little bit about micro verticals. Can you explain or define what that is?
Yeah, sure. So like you were saying, in this case specifically, Scott, when we're talking about EAM, it talks about the whole life of the asset, right? So it's not just specific, keeping it running and what's required from a maintenance perspective. It's really looking at the whole process from a holistic standpoint, right? And so what we have been doing and what we have done with a lot of our customers is really being able to look at the industry needs. And when we say micro vertical, we're talking about companies that have power generation as their main activities. Obviously, there are different areas to power generation, because if you generate the power, you have to put it out there, right? Be able to transmit it and then distribute it to the final user. So our experience has been mostly in the power generation area, which means that we have different type of companies, right? So we have a lot of customers which we call thermal power generation, which means that anything that has combustion, right? So we're talking about bunker, we're talking diesel, gas, carbon, those type of.
Do you do any cogen, combined cycle, that type of stuff?
Right, we do cogen, right? Absolutely. And then we have, all sorts of them, right? We have some sugar mills that generate their own,
using bagasse.
So
right, using bagasse as a fuel or a feedstock.
Yeah. So we have all of those sorts, right? And it's interesting because those are equipments that are, they're critical equipment, right? Critical assets that you need to take care of. And because of the combustion, they wear out, right? So that's one of the things that it comes out, and then we need to take care of them quickly, because the downtime of that is not anything anybody wants to be able to budget or take into account, right? So that's one of the key things. And as we have seen, it's interesting because the energy sector has been evolving, right? So we're seeing that, that's kind of the earlier type of generation. Now we're seeing a lot of, obviously, hydro, which is, water, right? And then we're seeing a lot of that, lately in the wind and solar, right? They're cleaner.
I'm going to interrupt real quick. From a hydro perspective, how do they permit hydro? Because hydro is it's not like solar or wind where you can sort of throw things out there. Hydro is a real physical reality of here's water. There we go. How do they get that rolling? That's
well, it's all by permits and studies, right? And they need to do a whole bunch of different scenarios and be able to put it. But for some specific countries, because of the geography, it's great. It's energy that's already in there that it's really, I wouldn't say cheap, but once you have it running, they can really produce a lot efficiently. And depending on the type of, country and resources, they have to look at what they have. They might not have as much wind or easy access to put those winds, right? So, and also maybe solar, because of the clouds or whatever, it might not be as easy. Then they, so it depends on the country, right? And the geography and the state and where you're looking at.
Yeah, and I would imagine it's just like anything else. You have a portfolio of generation options, right? You go to some places within California, San Gorgonio, Tehachapi, tremendous amount of wind assets up there because, well, there's a lot of wind up there. And then, of course, you go to the desert, a lot of sun. So, yeah, it all just depends on that. Do you guys dabble into geothermal?
Yes, we have. Yes, we have. And it's, it's fun because that's what's the raw material, right, that you're using. It comes from the ground, right? So it's already there, right? So
that's a fascinating technology, and you don't realize how powerful that resource is when you start pulling that from that aquifer, from that thermal layer. Man, it's powerful, and it's pretty cool stuff, man. I love the engineering. Now, when we start talking about generation, you guys are focused on generation. How do you sort of approach a facility? Let's just take it a typical thermal type of facility. How do you approach that?
So, I mean, it really depends where they are. And let's take a step back and try to understand how the market is moving right now. And because of all the things that are going on and the new efficiencies that they're getting in the solar and the wind, right? Things are changing really, really fast. And what I mean by that is that the owners, either the investment funds or the venture capitalists, the folks that are putting up the money for these plants, right, they are changing the way they're thinking about it, right? And they look at it from a very, specific business perspective, right? What is my investment? How long is it going to last? What's going to be the return? And that is what we're seeing really a really fast turnaround in the market, right? Things that were maybe stable 5 or 10 years ago, right? They're moving around real quickly because the investments are moving around. So it really depends what is their vision from a high level. So if we're talking, for example, right now we're talking with a group of companies, right? They own different type of assets, right? Through the different regions. And now they're acquiring, right, a new plant. So what they're saying is, hey, I have the standard, right? It's a natural gas. I want to be able to take the same standard, which we are, we're operating efficiently and we like it, and then take it into the next plants. So that's one of the ways that, we go in, and as we go in, we talk to them and we move forward.
Yeah, because your calculus and how you analyze those particular generation assets differ from the technology, because you're normal, or what used to be the past, I could be completely wrong and old, used to be calculated from a heat rate perspective and how efficient that particular asset. And that's a hard thing from my perspective to translate into, let's say, a wind turbine. But there has to be some sort of level setting capabilities of saying, yeah, that wind turbine will be available X amount given the amount. Do you take that into consideration as well?
Right. So that's at the end, what they're looking at is, what's my cost of generating, right? Kilowatt hour, right? And or megawatt, right? And then basically they're looking at it and try to understand, what is that going to be, the major driver? And then, when are they going to operate, right? Different technologies, what we call them, either solar, thermal, or wind, have different, costs associated to them. So it depends when you're looking at it, right? So if you're looking at a specific plant, we can go in and help them out, because the way that they structure their assets, right, and the way they go about their procedures, it's pretty much a standard, right, that we can help and implement real quickly. So for example, if you're talking to a thermal plant, they usually use a structure called KKS, which is kind of a German standard for how you organize and put the hierarchy of your assets, right? And you're able to go in really quickly, which applies also to wind, right? You can apply it there, right? But then again, it depends, what are they looking for? So for example, right now we're talking with a large a company that has a lot of wind parks, right, all over US, right? And even though they have a software, they don't have the visibility that they would like on, what's going to fail and when, based on, let's say, a global indicator. So that's what we're trying to come in, right? We're also bringing in our technology, but also our experience and expertise to say, hey, this is, we can build a model that can predict when things are going to fail. So you have visibility, and then you can act before it fails.
Yeah, and you can deploy the capital necessary at the right time to, from a purely financial perspective, I don't want to have inventory if I don't need to have inventory. And if I have great insights into my assets that are out there in the field, and I feel warm and fuzzy and cuddly that they're not going to fail, therefore I don't need to fill up my inventory with the possibility of something failing. And that is a good financial decision. Now, when we start talking about those wind turbines and they have their own software, do you have custom APIs that interact with your EAM system? Do you pull information in?
Right. So we can pull information in from basically any API that's out there. So we can do web services. We can do, we can talk to an SQL, do an XML. So from a technical standpoint, really, we're not limited. We have various ways of getting the information into EAM. The important thing here is to know that even though they might have some software to control it or be able to drive some of the main, let's say, indicators or things that might go wrong, what we're trying to do is capture, the holistic picture, the whole thing that ties into it. So, for example, we're talking to this, customer saying, hey, I want to be able to compare this wind park in this state, and again, to this other state that is not, as harsh winters. And I want to be able to see, does that has an impact, right? And I want to be able to determine what are the trends based either, on temperature, on the type of, climate that we're experiencing, and try to be able to compare, to be able to see. Also, depending on how my people are interacting, right? What's the type of maintenance and task and things, and then be able to determine patterns, right? Which we will be able to determine, what's going to happen next.
See, and this is interesting because you're talking something pretty dynamic and pretty sophisticated, and you got to get up and have those conversations prior to really deploying a full-blown EAM platform, because you want to bake that level of insights into your everyday business. And that, to me, and I'm going to ask this question: why is EAM so important from a energy perspective? Why do customers need to look into that?
Well, I think that the most important thing, it really helps them, make their operations more efficient, right? And be able to understand what's involved, because depending on the need, for example, we have some customers that are very well advanced in their maintenance operations. So now we're doing, reliability center maintenance, right? But that's something that EAM can take into. So it's not only looking at the equipment and how is it behaving, but it's also being able to apply, for example, standards that are really tied to, asset management excellence, right? So we're doing, we're looking at ISO 55000. So how can I get to that standard, right? So basically we're using EAM as a platform to really take it to the next level. So people are really, using and utilizing those assets to the next level, which goes beyond just saying, is it operating, where I want it to be or not? And then on top of that, we can add things like, for example, artificial intelligence. We can then look at data to determine patterns, so we can predict when the asset is going to fail, and then we can act obviously before that. And
then of course you're looking at IoT devices. You're going to stick them out on whatever that asset is, and it's trending, it's pulling, it's going to the edge, it's going to the cloud, it's pulling it into your EAM, and the AI and whatever analytics you have is able to say, yep, it's all good. Spit. Whoa. There's a, algorithm there that's, that is absolutely spectacular. Now, put on your future hat there, Rene. Where do you see it going? Because that's pretty cool stuff. And I still think we're still at the beginning of it. And I don't think that we're really we're not there yet.
Yeah, so I will have to agree with you, Scott. I think there's a lot of things coming on and things that are moving, a lot of different pieces moving around. So one of the things that we've been able to determine, I was mentioning to you, that we have been able to determine basically a model which is called a maintenance health asset index, which is basically telling you from a probability, right? When is it going to, where's your exposure, right? Where is your risk? So we can do that today. And what happens is, for, let's say, a venture capitalist or investment fund or somebody that's interested, they want to see the whole picture, right? They obviously care about the detail, but they want to start from a high level, see where their exposure is. So that's where we start.
Yeah, and see, that's interesting, because you're absolutely right. You get a great picture of the health of your assets on this particular, facility, whatever. Do you grade it? It's like 90%, where whatever.
Correct. So what we're doing is having their source, and then from Infor first, which is in the cloud, right?
Yes.
And then what we're doing is we're taking this to the next level. So what we're doing is being able to give them visibility of everything that's going on with the probability from a high level standpoint, meaning the whole system, right? And then you're able to drill down to see where your exposure is, whether it is a plant, and within that plant where there's a system, and then within that system where there's a subsystem, all the way down to the part or the spare that needs to be changed.
And that is based off of the ability to be able to predict, look into that asset. Okay, and is it a sort of a dashboard type of, me not being Mr. Computer guy, I'm looking at it from a dashboard and I see green is good, yellow is sort of that, and red is not good. And so I can drill down and see why that thing is red.
Correct. That's the idea behind it. Yes, to make it simple, right? So again, there are other control systems out there, but what we're trying to do is being able to put it from a perspective of, where's the risk from a maintenance perspective. And then also, some of the things that we're working on right now, if I put my Google glasses on and look forward, right, in the future, we're talking about artificial intelligence.
Yes.
We're definitely talking a lot about machine learning.
Yep.
And surprisingly enough, what we're seeing out there with, our first projects is that you're able to determine what are the real thresholds of an equipment working in your plant against what the OEM set.
Yeah.
And what we've seen is that it's not the same. So
No.
your equipment as installed, as operating in the conditions with the humidity and all those other variables that affect it might be behaving very differently than what the OEM said. In this case, we have an example that we did. It was the alarm was supposed to be less than half of what the OEM said regarding a vibration setting, right? So that really plays into the idea that not only do I have to be able to comply and work within the standards, but those standards and thresholds are the ones that apply to my equipment in my variables with my different ecosystems.
And see, that would be interesting. If I had a portfolio of generation assets, and I don't care what it is, it's just a portfolio, that applies to each one of my assets that I have in various locations. And I now, me personally, with this particular product, this EAM, using the AI, using all of the tools that are available, I can really hone in on the special characteristics of each one of those locations and optimize the performance of those assets.
Correct. And the idea is that you can also tell, from a high level perspective, what needs to be changed, right? And when, because when they're looking at this type of projects, really, they have to be able to determine, what are the risks and when do I invest? When do I do a major shutdown, right? If I'm looking at a gas turbine, it's not an easy task to do a major overhaul, right? We're talking millions of dollars, right? So when is the right time? When should I act, right? When should I invest? And that takes a lot of factors into play, right? So the ability to have all that information helps you a lot.
Yeah, and you got to keep at it. You can't just, there's a refinement that takes place, a honing in that ability to be able to make those tactical decisions of the when is really important. And it's just, you got to hone it. All right, we got to wrap it up. All right, listeners out there, we talked a lot about the Maintenance Asset Health Index, which is very important from a generation portfolio perspective, very powerful. We're talking about that Infor EAM product as a important tool for your particular, again, portfolio of generation assets. You need that doggone thing. You got to get it. And Rene, how do I get a hold of you? How do the people get a hold of you and saying, man, what he was talking about is something that I want to hear more about?
So thanks, Scott. Yeah, so you can go out to our website, VisualK, visual and K as in kilo.com, and you can reach our webpage and then just, leave us a message.
Hey, are you out there on LinkedIn?
Yeah, we're on LinkedIn. You can find me, Rene Nazario, and like Nancy, Azario. And you can find me on LinkedIn as well, and we'll be glad to, try to understand your needs and help you out.
Love it. VisualK is the company. Rene Nazario is the CEO of this particular wonderful company. Rene, thank you. Thank you very much for joining the Industrial Talk podcast.
Thank you, Scott. My pleasure.
You listeners out there, do not go away. We will be right back.
You're listening to the Industrial Talk Podcast Network.
All right, once again, thank you very much for joining the Industrial Talk podcast. Rene Nazario, CEO of VisualK, just laying the truth down about why Infor EAM is an incredible product, an incredible platform, backed up by those incredible, a lot of incredibles in that particular statement, people that can deliver solutions that'll make you a better company. Reach out to Rene. Go out to his LinkedIn stack card. He is active out there. I guarantee you will not be disappointed. Again, you need to collaborate, innovate, educate with a sense of speed and purpose. Be tenacious about it. Do not give up. Do not give up. We need you each and every day. Hang out with people who are bold, brave, dare greatly, innovate. It'll change the way you look at the business. Now, we're going to have another great interview. Another great EAM practitioner right around the corner. Thank you. Again, be bold, be brave, dare greatly, change the world. That's what we're all about. Another interview right around the corner.